The rejection email arrived at 9:47 a.m., and Bianca Walsh read it 3 times before accepting that the words would not change. Another gallery had passed on her work, citing insufficient commercial appeal, as if art was supposed to be a commodity rather than an expression of the human soul. She closed her laptop with more force than necessary, rattling the chipped coffee mug on her tiny kitchen table. The converted warehouse loft she shared with 2 roommates was quiet this morning, everyone else already gone to their respectable jobs with steady paychecks and health insurance. Bianca had chosen a different path, one that involved oil paints under her fingernails and a bank account that made her wince every time she checked it. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Cara. "Emergency catering gig tonight. Fancy corporate thing. You in? $500. Bianca texted back immediately. Absolutely. The money would cover rent with enough left over for new canvas. She had sworn off catering work months ago after a particularly horrible wedding where the bride had thrown a champagne flute at her, but $500 was $500. Pride was a luxury she could not afford. That evening, Bianca arrived at the Meridian Hotel downtown, its glass facade reflecting the sunset in brilliant oranges and reds that made her fingers itch for a paintbrush. The event was some kind of corporate celebration for Morrison Industries, a manufacturing company she had never heard of despite it apparently being one of the largest employers in the city. The banquet hall was decorated with understated elegance, all clean lines and expensive minimalism that probably cost more than her yearly income. "You're on champagne duty," the catering manager said, shoving a tray into her hands. "Circulate, smile, be invisible." Bianca had mastered the art of being invisible. She moved through the crowd in her black uniform, offering drinks to men in suits that cost more than her car and women dripping in jewelry that could fund a small nation. The conversations washed over her in waves of corporate jargon and humble brags about vacation homes and stock portfolios. This was not her world. These were not her people. She was refilling her tray at the bar when she noticed him. He stood slightly apart from a cluster of executives, tall and broad-shouldered in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been crafted specifically for his body. Dark hair with just enough gray at the temples to suggest he was in his mid-30s, strong jaw, and an expression that managed to be both attentive and distant. He was listening to an older man speak, nodding occasionally, but his eyes were scanning the room like he was looking for an exit. Bianca recognized that look. She wore it herself at family gatherings when her relatives asked about her hobby and when she was going to get a real job. Their eyes met across the room for just a second before she looked away, reminding herself of her invisible status. She was the help. He was clearly someone important based on the way people kept trying to engage him in conversation. Different worlds. An hour into the event, Bianca was in the service corridor taking a breath of recycled air and giving her feet a break from the heels the catering company required when the door opened. The man in the charcoal suit stepped through, loosening his tie with one hand. He stopped when he saw her, and for a moment they both froze like kids caught skipping class. "Sorry," he said. "I did not know anyone was back here. I was just heading back out." Bianca straightened, reaching for her tray. "Do not leave on my account. I am the one intruding on your break." He had a nice voice, deeper than she expected, with a hint of warmth that contradicted his formal appearance. "How much longer does this thing run?" "Another 2 hours, I think," he groaned, and the sound was so genuine and unguarded that Bianca almost laughed. 2 hours. I have given speeches to shareholders that felt shorter. Not a fan of parties. Not a fan of mandatory celebration. He leaned against the wall, and she noticed how the formal posture he had maintained in the ballroom seemed to melt away. We hit a production milestone. Everyone is excited. I am grateful, but I have never been good at this part. The schmoozing, the pretending. He looked at her directly then, really looked at her, and Bianca felt something shift in the air between them. I am Owen, by the way. Bianca, she should not be having this conversation. She should be back in the ballroom being invisible and earning her $500. But there was something about the exhaustion in his eyes that felt familiar, like looking in a mirror. Bianca, he repeated, and her name sounded different in his mouth, more substantial somehow. What do you do when you are not serving champagne to overpaid executives? I paint. And you are probably one of those overpaid executives, so I should watch my commentary. The smile that crossed his face transformed him completely. Probably. What do you paint? Everything. Anything. Whatever demands to be painted. She knew she sounded pretentious, but it was the truth. Mostly I paint things that no one wants to buy, apparently. The best art usually is the hardest to sell. People do not like being challenged. Bianca raised an eyebrow. That is a surprisingly thoughtful take from someone at a corporate party. I contain multitudes. His tone was dry but not unkind. Or maybe I am just good at reading the backs of gallery catalogs while pretending to understand contemporary art. At least you are honest about it. The door burst open and a harried woman in an expensive dress poked her head through. Owen, there you are. The governor wants to say hello before he leaves. Owen's expression shifted back to that polite, distant mask. Of course. Tell him I will be right there. When the woman left, he turned back to Bianca. Duty calls, but I would like to see your work sometime, your paintings. I do not think we exactly run in the same circles. Maybe that is exactly why I should see them. He pulled a business card from his pocket, one of those heavy, expensive ones that whispered money. My email. Send me your portfolio. Bianca took the card, fully intending to throw it away the moment he left. Owen Morrison, Chief Executive Officer, Morrison Industries. Of course he was the CEO. Of course this entire party was for him. The universe had a wicked sense of humor. I will think about it, she said, which was a polite lie. He held her gaze for a moment longer, and Bianca had the unsettling feeling that he knew exactly what she was thinking. Then he was gone, back through the door to the land of governors and executives and people who belonged in places like this. She looked at the card in her hand. The paper was thick, expensive, embossed. She should definitely throw it away. Instead, she tucked it into her pocket and went back to being invisible. 3 days later, at 2 in the morning, Bianca sat in front of her laptop with a glass of cheap wine and Owen Morrison's business card. She had finished a painting that night, one of her best, and the high of creation had not worn off yet. The piece was a riot of color and emotion, a thunderstorm rendered in purples and blacks with lightning strikes of yellow that seemed to leap off the canvas. It was angry and beautiful and utterly unmarketable according to every gallery that had ever rejected her work. She opened a new email, closed it, opened it again. This was stupid. He had been making polite conversation in a hallway. He probably handed out business cards like candy and never expected anyone to actually contact him. CEOs did not care about struggling artists. They collected art as investments, not because they wanted to be challenged or moved or changed by it, but his eyes had been kind, and tired, and real in a way that most people at that party had not been. Before she could talk herself out of it, Bianca attached images of her last 5 paintings and typed a brief message. You asked to see my work. Here it is. No pressure to respond. Thanks for the hallway conversation. She hit send before she could reconsider and immediately wanted to delete it from existence. She did not expect a response. She definitely did not expect a response at 8:30 the next morning while she was still in bed. These are extraordinary. Raw and honest, and exactly the kind of challenge people need. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I have some thoughts I would like to discuss. No obligation. Bianca read the email 4 times. She showed it to her roommate Jules, who read it twice and then looked at her with wide eyes. He is a CEO. He probably wants to commission something for his office. This could be huge, or it could be nothing. Only one way to find out. They met at a small coffee shop far from the financial district, a place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls that Bianca had always loved. She had chosen it deliberately, a test of sorts. If Owen Morrison was only comfortable in his world of luxury and expense accounts, she would know immediately that any connection between them was impossible. He arrived exactly on time, wearing jeans and a navy sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. He ordered a black coffee and did not complain about the lack of oat milk or whatever executives typically drank. When he sat down across from her, Bianca realized she was nervous in a way that had nothing to do with business opportunities. "Thank you for meeting me," Owen said. "I know this is probably strange." "A little," Bianca admitted. "I am still not sure why a CEO wants to talk to me about my work. Because your work is good, really good, and because I have been thinking about what you said about painting things that no one wants to buy." He wrapped his hands around his coffee mug, and Bianca noticed he did not wear a wedding ring. "I run a manufacturing company. We make component parts for industrial equipment. It is stable, profitable, and about as exciting as watching paint dry, no pun intended. Sounds like you love it." "I am good at it. That is not the same thing." He took a sip of coffee, and Bianca could see him choosing his words carefully. "My father built Morrison Industries from nothing. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited it along with the expectation that I would maintain his legacy. And I have. We have grown every year. We employ over 2,000 people. We are a pillar of the community. But I look at your paintings and I see passion. I see someone creating because they have to, because something inside them demands it. I have not felt that way about my work in a very long time." He looked directly at her. Maybe ever. Bianca did not know what to say. This was not the conversation she had been expecting. "So what are you asking me?" "I do not know yet. Maybe I just needed to talk to someone who understands what it is like to care about something impractical." He smiled, and it was self-deprecating and genuine. "That probably sounds ridiculous coming from someone in my position. It sounds honest." Bianca found herself leaning forward. "Why stay if you hate it?" "I do not hate it. That would be easier. I just feel disconnected from it. Like I am playing a role instead of living a life." Owen paused. "My father loved every minute of running that company. He lived and breathed manufacturing. I have spent 5 years trying to feel that same passion, and I think I finally have to accept that I never will." "What would you do instead?" "That is the question, is it not?" He laughed quietly. "I have spent so much time being responsible and practical that I am not sure I remember how to want something just because it makes me happy." They talked for 2 hours. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from art to business to philosophy to childhood memories. Owen had grown up wealthy but lonely, the only child of a driven father and a mother who had died when he was young. Bianca had grown up middle class in a loving but bewildered family who could not understand why their daughter wanted to paint instead of becoming a teacher or a nurse. They were different in almost every measurable way, but somehow that seemed to matter less and less as the morning wore on. When they finally left the coffee shop, Owen walked her to her car, a 12-year-old sedan with a dent in the passenger door. He did not comment on it, just stood there with his hands in his pockets looking like he did not want the conversation to end. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Not for business, just to talk." Bianca knew she should say no. She knew this could not lead anywhere good. They were too different, their lives too far apart. But when she looked at him, she did not see a CEO. She saw someone tired of pretending, someone searching for something real, someone whose eyes lit up when she talked about art even though he admitted he did not always understand it. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." Over the next few weeks, they fell into an easy pattern. Owen would text her in the mornings, usually something simple like coffee or lunch, and Bianca would rearrange her painting schedule to meet him. They went to museums and food trucks, walked through parks and sat in diners. Owen never took her to expensive restaurants or fancy venues. He seemed to prefer the simple places, the unpolished edges of the city that people like him usually avoided. Bianca found herself looking forward to his messages, to the way his whole face changed when he smiled, to the serious way he considered her opinions even when they disagreed. He was smart and thoughtful and surprisingly funny when he let his guard down. He asked questions about her art that showed he was really listening, really trying to understand her perspective. And slowly, carefully, he began to open up about his own life, the weight of expectations and inherited obligations, the isolation of always being the person in charge. "You know what the worst part is?" he asked one afternoon as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. "I have everything I am supposed to want: success, money, respect, and I still feel empty." "Maybe you are measuring success wrong," Bianca said gently. "Maybe it is not about what you have. Maybe it is about how you feel when you wake up in the morning. How do you feel when you wake up?" "Broke, stressed, uncertain about the future." She turned to look at him, "and excited to paint, eager to see what I can create, alive." Owen was quiet for a long moment. "I envy that. You could have it too, not the broke part obviously, but the rest of it." "It is not that simple." "It never is." Bianca knew she was treading on sensitive ground, but she pushed forward anyway. "But at some point you have to decide if you are living for yourself or for a ghost. Your father is gone, Owen. He does not get a vote anymore." He looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You are very direct. I cannot afford to be anything else. Life is too short to waste on pretending." "We are very different, you and I," Owen said quietly. "Is that a problem?" "I think it might be the opposite of a problem." He reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm and solid against hers. "I think you might be exactly what I need." Bianca's heart was racing, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you need?" "Someone real. Someone who sees me instead of my bank account or my last name or my father's legacy." He squeezed her hand. "Someone who challenges me to be better." "That sounds like a lot of pressure." "Does it scare you?" Bianca considered the question honestly. She was falling for him. That much was obvious. But falling for someone like Owen Morrison came with complications she had never had to navigate before. Their worlds were so different. His life was board meetings and charity galas and decisions that affected thousands of people. Hers was paint-stained clothes and ramen dinners and the constant hustle to make rent. What kind of future could they possibly have together? "Yes," she said finally. "It scares me, because I really like you and I do not see how this works. We are too different." Owen turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Different how?" "Because you make art and I make industrial components. Because you are spontaneous and I am careful. Because you have paint under your fingernails and I have to wear suits to work. All of that." "Yes." "Those are surface differences, Bianca. They are details." He was still holding her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "What matters is underneath. And underneath, I think we understand each other better than most people who appear compatible on paper. You make it sound simple. I am not saying it is simple. I am saying it is worth it. Owen hesitated, then continued. I have dated women from my world, women with the right pedigree and the right connections and the right everything. And every single one of those relationships has been hollow because they wanted Owen Morrison, CEO. They did not want me. How do you know I am any different? Because you did not even want to email me your portfolio. Because you chose this coffee shop instead of somewhere impressive for our first meeting. Because you have never once asked me for anything. He smiled. Because when you look at me, you seem vaguely annoyed by the CEO part, not impressed by it. Bianca could not help but laugh. That is fair. I do find the CEO thing kind of intimidating. Good. I find your talent intimidating. We are even. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that different could work, that the distance between their worlds was not an impossible chasm. But doubt was a familiar companion, one that had kept her safe from disappointment for years. I need to think about this, she said. Owen nodded, disappointment flickering across his face before he masked it. Of course. Take all the time you need. But as she drove home that evening, Bianca could not stop thinking about the way his hand had felt in hers, warm and steady and real. She could not stop thinking about the way he listened when she talked, like every word mattered. She could not stop thinking about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, different was not a problem to overcome but an opportunity to discover. She called Kara as soon as she got home. I think I am falling in love with Owen Morrison, the CEO, from the catering gig. Yes. And this is a problem because we are completely incompatible, because he lives in a mansion and I live in a warehouse with 2 roommates, because his world and my world might as well be different planets. Kara was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? When you are with him, do you feel happy? Yes. Does he treat you well, respect you, make you feel valued? Yes to all of that. Then who cares about the rest? Bianca, you have been alone for 2 years because you refuse to settle for anything less than genuine connection. And now you have found it, and you are inventing reasons to run away. Kara's voice softened. Maybe different is exactly what you both need. Maybe you balance each other out. After they hung up, Bianca sat in front of her easel for a long time without painting. She thought about Owen's tired eyes that first night in the service corridor. She thought about the way he came alive when they talked, shedding the CEO persona like an uncomfortable coat. She thought about how he had never once made her feel small or less than despite the vast difference in their bank accounts. He treated her art like it mattered, like she mattered, and that was not something she was willing to walk away from out of fear. She texted him. I am done thinking. Can you come over? He arrived 20 minutes later, which meant he must have broken several speed limits. Bianca met him at the door of her building, suddenly self-conscious about the peeling paint and the broken intercom, and the way the hallway always smelled vaguely of old cooking. Owen did not seem to notice any of it. He was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. I am sorry, she said before he could speak. I got scared and I tried to push you away, but I do not want that. I want this. I want you. Owen pulled her into his arms and Bianca felt something settle inside her chest, a rightness she had not known she was missing. I want you too, he said into her hair. So much it terrifies me. We are going to have to figure things out, navigate the differences. We will. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. Together. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. Bianca had been kissed before, but never like this, never with such intensity and tenderness combined. Owen kissed her like she was precious and necessary and real, and she kissed him back with all the passion she usually reserved for her art. They went upstairs to her tiny apartment, and Bianca watched as Owen took in the space. The canvases stacked against every wall, the paint splattered drop cloths, the thrift store furniture, and the ancient refrigerator that hummed too loudly. This was her life, unglamorous and chaotic and utterly different from anything he was used to. "I love it," Owen said, and he sounded like he meant it. "It is so completely you. It is a mess. It is alive." He walked over to look at her latest painting, still drying on the easel. "You are amazing, do you know that? I am broke and stubborn, and I eat cereal for dinner half the time. You are talented and passionate, and you make me want to be better." Owen turned to face her. "You make me want to figure out who I am outside of my father's expectations. You make me want to feel alive instead of just going through the motions. That is a lot of weight to put on one person." "I am not asking you to fix me, Bianca. I am just saying that being with you reminds me that there is more to life than obligation and duty." He crossed the room to her, taking both her hands in his. "I am falling in love with you. I know that is fast and maybe irresponsible, but it is the truth." Bianca felt tears prick at her eyes. "I am falling in love with you too, and it scares me because I do not know how to be with someone like you. Someone like me. Someone successful. Someone from a different world. Someone who intimidates me a little bit." Owen laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "You intimidate me constantly. Every time you talk about your art or your philosophy or your complete disregard for what other people think you should do with your life. You are fearless in a way I have never been." "I am not fearless. I am just too stubborn to quit. Same thing." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "We will figure this out. The differences do not matter as much as what we have in common." "What do we have in common?" "We are both searching for something real. We are both tired of pretending. We both know what it is like to feel out of place in the world we are supposed to fit into." Owen held her closer. "And we both just want to be seen for who we actually are, not who people expect us to be." Bianca realized he was right. For all their surface differences, at their core they were remarkably similar. Two people trying to figure out how to live authentic lives in a world that kept pushing them toward conformity. The next few months were a process of learning and adjustment. Owen introduced Bianca to his world slowly, taking her to small work events and eventually to larger galas, where she wore borrowed dresses and tried not to feel like an imposter. She met his colleagues and his friends, and while some of them looked at her with obvious confusion, Owen never wavered in his support. He held her hand proudly, introduced her as his girlfriend without hesitation, and made it clear that her presence in his life was non-negotiable. In turn, Bianca brought Owen into her world. He came to her studio and watched her paint, asking questions and learning the language of her art. He met her friends and her roommates, charming them with his genuine interest and his complete lack of pretension. He ate pizza on her paint-stained couch and helped her stretch canvases, and proved that wealth had not made him too precious to get his hands dirty. The differences did not disappear. There were moments of friction, times when their backgrounds clashed in uncomfortable ways. Bianca struggled with the expectations of Owen's social circle, with the unspoken rules and the judgment from people who thought she was with him for his money. Owen struggled with letting go of the rigid control he had always maintained over his life, with trusting that following his heart would not lead to disaster. But they worked through it. They talked and compromised and supported each other through the difficult moments. And slowly, impossibly, their different worlds began to merge. 6 months into their relationship, Owen made a decision. He hired a new CEO for Morrison Industries, someone who actually had passion for manufacturing, and stepped back to a chairman role that required far less day-to-day involvement. The board was skeptical, but Owen was firm. He had spent 5 years running a company he did not love. It was time to figure out what he actually wanted to do with his life. "Are you sure about this?" Bianca asked him the night before he announced the transition. "This is your father's legacy." "My father built something amazing, but he is gone, and I am still here, and I get to decide what my life looks like." Owen pulled her close. "You taught me that. You taught me that living authentically is more important than living up to someone else's expectations." "I do not think I taught you anything. I think you already knew it. You just needed permission to believe it." "Maybe." He kissed the top of her head. "Either way, you changed my life." With more free time, Owen began exploring interests he had suppressed for years. He took photography classes and discovered he had a good eye for composition. He volunteered with a youth mentorship program, finding fulfillment in helping young people navigate their own career questions. He started reading for pleasure again, something he had not done since college. And he invested in Bianca's career, not with money but with connections and support that helped her get her first real gallery show. The opening night of Bianca's exhibition was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She stood in the gallery surrounded by her work, watching strangers examine her paintings with critical eyes. Owen stood beside her, his hand warm in hers, steady and proud. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Like I might throw up, like I might fly, both at once." "That sounds about right." He squeezed her hand. "You are incredible. This work is incredible. Everyone can see it." By the end of the night, Bianca had sold 3 paintings and received interest from 2 major collectors. It was not enough to quit her day jobs completely, but it was a start, a validation that maybe her impractical dream was not so impossible after all. "I could not have done this without you," she told Owen as they left the gallery that night. "Yes, you could have. You were always this talented. I just helped open a few doors. You did more than that. You believed in me when I was not sure I believed in myself." Bianca stopped on the sidewalk, looking up at him in the glow of the streetlights. "You changed my life too, you know. You made me believe that love does not have to mean compromising who you are, that the right person will celebrate your differences instead of trying to sand them away." Owen pulled her into a kiss that made her forget they were standing on a public street. When they finally broke apart, he was smiling. "We are good together. We really are," Bianca laughed. "Even though we are completely different, especially because we are different. You push me to be braver. I help ground you when you are spinning out. You bring color and chaos into my structured world. I bring stability into your creative one. We balance each other." "I love you," Bianca said, the words coming easily now after months of practice. "I love you too. More than I knew I could love anyone." A year later, Owen proposed. Not with a grand gesture or a public display, but on a quiet Sunday morning in Bianca's studio while she was painting, and he was reading on the ancient couch. He simply got up, walked over to her easel and said, "Marry me." Bianca turned around, paintbrush still in hand, and found him holding a ring. It was beautiful but not ostentatious, a simple band with a single stone that caught the light like captured fire. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to support your dreams and have you challenge mine. I want to build something together that is ours, not his or hers, but ours." Owen's voice was steady, certain. "You are my person, Bianca. You are my home." She said yes before he even finished talking, throwing her arms around his neck and kissing him with all the joy and certainty she felt. The ring could wait. The logistics could wait. Right now, all that mattered was this moment, this man, this beautiful future stretching out before them. They got married 6 months later in a ceremony that perfectly blended their 2 worlds. The venue was a repurposed warehouse similar to Bianca's loft, filled with her artwork and simple, elegant decorations. The guest list included CEOs and struggling artists, Owen's business associates and Bianca's bohemian friends. The food was from a local family-owned catering company, and the music was a playlist they had created together over months of debate and compromise. Bianca wore a dress she had designed herself, incorporating paint splatters into the fabric in a way that was both beautiful and completely her. Owen wore a suit but skipped the tie, looking relaxed and genuinely happy in a way his wedding guests had rarely seen. When they exchanged vows, they spoke honestly about their journey, about how they had almost let their differences keep them apart, about how grateful they were that they had chosen courage over fear. "You are my opposite in so many ways," Owen said during his vows. "And that is what makes us perfect. You see the world through a lens of color and possibility. I see it through structure and practicality. Together, we see it completely. You are my balance, my challenge, my home. I love you exactly as you are, and I cannot wait to see who we become together." Bianca's vows were shorter but no less heartfelt. "I thought different meant impossible. I thought we were too far apart to ever really connect, but you taught me that different just means complementary, that the right person will fit into the spaces you did not even know you had. You make me better without making me less myself, and that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. I love you. I choose you, today and always." They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks wandering through museums and eating incredible food and making love in beautiful hotels. Owen took photographs while Bianca sketched, and they talked about everything and nothing, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. When they returned home, they bought a house together. Not Owen's mansion or Bianca's warehouse, but something new that belonged to both of them. It had a large studio for Bianca's painting and a home office for Owen's photography and mentorship work. It had a garden that neither of them knew how to maintain but were determined to learn. It had space for the life they were building together, one that honored both their pasts while creating something entirely new. 2 years into their marriage, Bianca had her first major solo exhibition at a prestigious gallery. The opening was attended by critics and collectors and people who had once rejected her work without a second thought. Owen stood beside her all night, radiating pride, occasionally stepping away to take photographs of the event. One critic approached Bianca near the end of the evening. "Your work has such intensity," she said. "Such raw emotion. Where does it come from?" Bianca looked across the room at Owen, who was talking with her parents and making them laugh. "It comes from being seen, from being loved for exactly who I am. From having someone in my life who celebrates my differences instead of trying to change them." The critic followed her gaze. "Your husband? Yes. You are very lucky. We both are." Bianca smiled. "We almost did not happen. I thought we were too different. But it turns out different is exactly what we needed." 3 years after they married, Bianca gave birth to their daughter. They named her Claire, and she had Owen's dark hair and Bianca's expressive eyes. Owen was a natural father, patient and engaged in a way that made Bianca fall in love with him all over again. He took paternity leave and spent his days learning how to change diapers and soothe a crying baby, approaching fatherhood with the same thoughtful intensity he brought to everything he cared about. Bianca painted less in those early months, but when she did paint, her work took on new dimensions. Motherhood had cracked something open inside her, a well of emotion she had not known existed. Her paintings became softer somehow, more nuanced, exploring themes of love and vulnerability and the terrifying beauty of creating life. "You are amazing," Owen told her one night as they sat together watching Claire sleep. You are raising our daughter and creating incredible art, and somehow managing to be present for all of it." "I am barely holding it together," Bianca admitted. "I cry at least once a day. I have paint in my hair and baby spit up on my shirt. I do not remember the last time I slept for more than 3 hours straight. You are still amazing." Owen kissed her temple. "You are doing the hardest job in the world, and you are doing it beautifully. We are doing it. You are right here with me, every step. Where else would I be?" He looked at her with such love that Bianca felt tears prick at her eyes. "This is everything I ever wanted. You, Claire, this life we have built together. I would not trade it for anything." As Claire grew, she became a perfect blend of her parents. She had Bianca's creativity and Owen's thoughtfulness, equally comfortable in a paint-stained studio or at a formal dinner. She moved between their worlds with ease, proof that different could not only coexist, but create something entirely new and beautiful. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen and Bianca left Claire with her grandparents and returned to the coffee shop where they had their first real conversation. It looked exactly the same, still mismatched furniture and local art on the walls, still the smell of good coffee and the hum of quiet conversation. "You remember what you said to me that day?" Owen asked as they sat in the same corner they had occupied years ago. "About living for yourself instead of for a ghost. I remember. I was probably too blunt. You were perfect. You were exactly what I needed to hear." Owen took her hand across the table. "I have been thinking about that conversation a lot lately, about how scared we both were. About how close we came to walking away from each other because we thought our differences were insurmountable. I am so glad we did not walk away. Me too. Because here is what I have learned in 5 years of marriage. Our differences are not something to overcome. They are our greatest strength. You challenge me to see the world differently. I help you build structure around your dreams. You bring spontaneity and color into my life. I bring stability and support into yours. We make each other better." Bianca felt tears on her cheeks, the happy kind. "I love our life. I love it too. I love you. I love the family we have created and the future we are building." Owen squeezed her hand. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for believing that different could work. Thank you for seeing me. For loving all the parts of me, even the messy ones." Bianca leaned across the table to kiss him. "You are my favorite adventure. And you are mine." They sat there for a long time, hands linked across the table, comfortable in the silence that came from truly knowing another person. Outside the window, the city moved around them, people rushing to their separate destinations. But inside this coffee shop, Owen and Bianca existed in their own perfect moment, proof that different was not a problem to solve but a gift to celebrate. Years later, when people asked them how they made their marriage work despite coming from such different worlds, they would smile at each other with the shared knowledge of people who had built something real and lasting. Owen would say something about balance and complementary strengths. Bianca would talk about the importance of being seen and valued for who you truly are. And together, they would tell the story of two people who almost let fear keep them apart, who almost believed that different meant impossible, who discovered that sometimes the person who seems all wrong is actually perfectly right. Their love story was not simple or easy or without challenges. But it was real. It was honest. It was built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine admiration and the courage to choose love over fear. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not that they came from the same world, but that they created a new world together, one where different was not a barrier but a bridge, where contrast created beauty, where two seemingly incompatible people discovered they fit together perfectly after all.